Previously on Idle Thumbs.
This is the Idle Thumbs Conf Grenade for GDC 2011.
Nideo
Nideo
Hog. Nideo Hog.
Video game.
We're joined by Nick Brecken, who is
Nid Brecken.
Nid Hog Brecken.
Brecken.
What? Why is Will Wright lecturing everyone on the defects of Soviet rocketry?
But he's Peter Molyneux. What are they going to do?
What is happening right now? What is this? So you guys should stay tuned to the next exciting episode of Idle Thumbs when we tell you how Phaedrus was almost in the Jurassic Park game. It's March 13th, 2012.
This is the Idle Thumbs GDC 2012 Conf Grenade number 2. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
And we have a bunch of really noisy GDC content for you. In a little bit, we will have 4 or 5 short interviews with various game developers who Steve and I, and in one case, Steve and Nick and I found while we were walking around GDC. So we'll have this for you a little later. And hopefully they sound okay. And now it's us.
Hi there.
To talk about other GDC stuff. Hello.
How was GDC, Chris?
Yeah.
It was good.
I heard you were interviewing people.
Yes. It was a pretty relaxing GDC for me. I kind of deliberately didn't overschedule myself or, I didn't even look at
the first GDC in a billion years that you've gone to not as press of some level of repute.
Well, no, I wasn't pressed last year. I was with Irrational.
Oh, right. Well, never mind. I lied. Sorry.
That's okay. I didn't even look at the schedules ahead of time, actually, or the sessions. I just showed up every day and checked out what I wanted to see. And Nick Brecken was there.
Oh, that's good.
So I get to hang out with him.
Was there anything super notable from a talk standpoint?
Yeah,
There's always one where you're like, oh man, that was the one.
I would say this year there was less of that. Like in a lot of GDCs,
this
kind
year
of
there
ripples.
wasn't one.
Well, what I mean is that in a lot of GDCs, you hear about the really big talks that kind of buzz around the halls and they kind of ripple around. And it didn't feel like there was as much of that this year. It might have been that since I was taking it a little more low key, I just wasn't as tuned into that stuff, but it felt like a less kind of explosive GDC in that respect.
You didn't accidentally notice the overarching theme of GDC
right,
this year?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Some years?
Yeah, I didn't really perceive that as much. But there were some talks I really liked. I did like Brendan's talk and Adam Zombie Smasher, which we talked about before. I really liked. And also my other favorite was probably Greg Kasavin's talk on atmosphere. Greg Kasavin of Supergiant Games, who made Bastion. It was a really good talk. He, like a lot of GDC talks about kind of descriptive game terms, a lot of what he tried to do was to formalize what atmosphere means, as opposed to just talking vaguely about things like immersion and atmosphere and stuff like that.
The usual, you all know what this means.
Right, exactly, yeah. He really tried to dig deep into what we mean when we say atmosphere in games and why it's important and how it can be achieved. And I thought it was just really, really great because Bastion definitely had a lot of it. And a lot of what it came down to for him was atmosphere is about it's essentially how the theme of a game is expressed. So atmosphere is what's expressed by what the game is actually about, not just the plot, but its themes and its kind of overarching coherency. And it's really important to get strong atmosphere across in your games to make sure that everything has really strong internal consistency. You want to feel like the world is really ties itself together behind the scenes. And he said he wrote probably just as much, if not more, text about the characters and about the world and about what had happened and the events leading up to the game and so on, as actually shipped in the game. Like there's tons and tons of material that he wrote and he considered that never even made it into the game. And how that manifests itself is in all of those small little intangible details that are present in the world, and that's what forms the atmosphere.
But everyone who's working on the game has that
Exactly.
huge working text to fill in or to guide them, I guess.
And he went into a lot of detail about all the different aspects of this, and he brought up dozens of other games from like the last 20 years, which I thought was really cool. And he made the point that I agree with, that atmosphere is not really at all a function of visual fidelity or technical mastery. Some of the games that he referred to were like the original Wing Commander and Ultima 4, and games that are very crude by modern standards, but have a lot of those qualities that give them really strong atmosphere. And one of the reasons I liked his talk so much is because I personally feel that atmosphere is the most important means by which games can convey meaning. Like in general, I think the actual plot of most games is pretty poor, and most games, the settings are either pretty generic or pretty uninteresting, and a lot of the dialogue is often terrible. But one of the things games can really, really excel at is great atmosphere, because you're in a world and because you're actually exploring yourself, and because you're self-pacing a lot of the time in a game. I feel like atmosphere is the thing that persists. Like it's really easy to break pacing and to make conversations absurd and to really just screw up mechanics. I mean, that's a lot of the stuff we talk about on Idle Thumbs,
Right.
is the sort of weird implied stories that come out of kind of subverting what the game is trying to do. But I think the aspect of games that can really maintain its integrity, even in the face of that, is its atmosphere. And
Is that a point he made, or is it just something?
no, that's just
pieced
something.
together?
No, that's just something that's something that I think, and is one of the reasons I liked his talk, is because it's one of the reasons I think atmosphere is so important. Anyway, don't want to dominate the conversation with that one talk, but I really liked it. And if he may put up his slides or something later. A lot of times speakers do that. So
He will.
If he does, you should.
Which we're confirming that he will on this podcast.
Okay, that's good.
Assuming he listens to this and is guilted into it because of this. That's
Yeah.
there's an ulterior motive. Yeah.
And then the other talk that kind of sticks in my mind is the I don't have as much to say about this because it was more of one of those just kind of fun talks, but it was Tim Kane's postmortem on the original Fallout, and it was
I heard you talking about that.
there weren't as many kind of grand points made. It was just a lot of really interesting information, including some just insane shit, like the fact that when they were trying to get Windows 95 certification for their game so they could put the little Windows 95 sticker on the box, they failed certification because the game worked on Windows NT.
What?
In the Windows 95 certification, games must work obviously completely fine on Windows 95, but must fail gracefully on Windows NT.
Because they're supposed to like try and get you to pony up the extra money for 95.
And so
I'm sure they want gamers to want 95 and not the hardcore OS or whatever. Oh,
and
man.
so they went back and they just put in a simple like if-then check in their installer that if the user is running Windows NT, then just crash installer. And Microsoft then gave them their certification. And what that basically meant is that for all of the rest of time, because starting with like Windows 2000, it was all based on NT.
Yep.
So it just basically meant Fallout 1 was broken forever.
Good.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
Yep. So good for that. There was a lot of really interesting stuff. I mean, that was one of those sort of goofy, weird, just flukes of history. But there's a lot of just interesting points made. And it was one of those talks that reminds you how much game development has changed since 1997, but also how many aspects have not changed at all. I mean, it was really interesting hearing him talk about all of the just onerous ways the marketing department tried to kind of assert itself onto the development of the game in just really, like Diablo comes out, and then as soon as Diablo's out, it's like, oh man, this is kind of looks like our game, but it's a real-time multiplayer online action RPG. We should make our game like that. Meanwhile, Fallout is a single-player turn-based,
Right.
like, and they apparently wasted just months and tons of money doing feasibility tests to see what would be required to turn the game into a game like Diablo. And even though they didn't actually end up doing that, they had to spend a bunch of time and money to determine that it was not worth doing, which is the kind of thing that's just, well, of course not. That wasn't the game you're making ever. Why?
That still happens all the time.
Yep, that's real still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose. I suppose that happens.
True.
We played 18-player Joust. That was
Yeah,
our
that was
one
good.
GDC experience.
Yeah, the only thing that we ended
had.
up doing at GDC was going to the Wild Rumpus Venus Patrol party, which was actually really good.
It was really good. I always tiptoe
Wild
in.
Rumpus, Venus Patrol, and One Life Left.
And One Life Left party. Sorry, One Life Left.
That's fine.
No, I always tiptoe into indie game GDC parties because they can go one of two ways. But this one was really good. It was really great. It was in a big open
Yeah, I agree.
space in the mission, and they had a Proteus hangout room. They
Yeah.
had 18-player Joust. They had a
Mega GIRP.
Mega GIRP mat, which is awesome.
Have we talked about Mega GIRP?
We'll walk through all of these.
Okay.
I think we have. I think we've talked about the various
Yeah.
Bennett Foddy, Doug Wilson crossovers.
Yeah.
There were a couple games that we didn't really hang out in front of. You played. I don't remember the name of the game with the pedal that you played.
Oh, I don't remember the name of it either because the name of the game was like obscured often by the interface. But it was this game where it sort of just has a randomly generated kind of craggy landscape, and it's just two colors. So ground is black and sky is white, and each player controls one colored dot out of 5 colored dots, and each player, the sole input is a foot pedal that is either depressed or not, and it proceeds by just the little dots going in a parabola-like pattern across the map, and you have to hold down the pedal while underground, like while your dot passes underground, and then release it as it comes back above ground. And the more accurately you can do that, the more momentum you'll gain.
So it's kind of like Tiny Wings.
Yeah, it's like Tiny Wings with a pedal, sort of. I don't know if you played Tiny
No, I haven't
Wings.
played that.
Oh, it's a really great game.
It's an iOS game where you're a
Yeah.
bird who swoops around, but you sort of can tuck in your wings to
Okay.
to make your arc more extreme.
It sounds like that.
Yeah.
But then there's a sort of prescribed like cutoff where you suffer if you do the wrong thing, depending on whether you're over or above ground. And so it feels, and maybe Tiny Wings is like this too, but I basically ended up winning pretty much every game of that I played, and it felt like a lot of it was because I was able to get into the rhythm of it. Like it felt very much about rhythm, even though it's not sort of a traditional rhythm game. It's not linked up to music or anything, but you get into that.
You're gonna sort of get
feel
the
of
flow of
nature
the
of
arcs
the
going.
off
Yeah.
on. Yeah, exactly. It was cool. It was a nice, elegant, simple little game.
The other thing right next to that was PoleRiders, which is
Oh my gosh! Oh.
so I think actually at last year's GDC Conf Grenade we talked about Nidhogg, which is the versus sword fighting game.
Which has still not been released.
Yeah,
somehow.
Nidhogg not being released is out of control, but PoleRiders actually is released, and you can play it online on the developer's website.
Foddy.net.
Yeah.
FODDY.net.
It's another versus game, kind of like Nidhogg, or like a fighting game, I guess. But both players have like 20-foot high, like pole vaulting poles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a game that has like very like it's 2D and flat and very simple graphics, but everything that's in the game visually is very specific and all contributes to the goal of the game. So there's sort of like 2 castles at each end, and then you each play as a guy in sort of like gym shorts and a tank top with a pole vaulting pole. And then
There's a kickball and a clothesline between you running across. Yeah,
it's like a kettleball on a clothesline, and you're trying to just get the ball to one castle or the other.
it's very good.
It's very strange.
Yeah, so
but it seems it
you
feels
can
like
hit the ball with your pole, or you can like
pole vault yourself into the air and then kick it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different ways you can interact with the pole and the ball.
Also,
and
you can
your
poke the other
character.
guy with the pole, and it was. I didn't actually get to play it at the party, but I went and played it afterwards. But at the party, it's a amazingly good party game. Apparently,
It really is.
Like,
yeah.
You find yourself cheering for complete strangers. It's because you get into people get into these standoffs trying to move the ball a quarter of an inch in which to score.
Right, and then one person
score a
just-
goal.
Nidhogg works in a similar way, but
Yeah.
people can't play that game, which is infuriating.
Yeah.
Just the weird. There's enough.
There's like micro conflicts.
there's enough
Yeah.
sort of colliding systems inside of that are being controlled by 2 different people that
And
just
like
weird upsets happen and people go crazy.
and like Nidhogg, it's very much about a kind of long-term push to the left or right. Like in Nidhogg, you're very unlikely to win by just, in Nidhogg, you play by successively pushing your opponent back one screen at a time. And it's very unlikely, unless you're really unevenly matched, that you will win by just killing him at every
There's almost
screen
never
in
a
row.
straight
Like,
left to right push.
exactly,
Someone gains the upper hand for a while, and then the tables turn again.
And even though PoleRiders isn't delineated by screen like that, it's one continuous plane, it still has that back and forth push. And there were definitely cases where one player would get the ball almost into the other player's goal, and then the other guy would win with just like a crazy sprint across. There's all kinds of cool stuff like that. I played a game with Brendan Sheffield, who's the editor-in-chief of Game Developers, one of my old coworkers, and I think it's maybe 7 games to a match. I'm not sure, and we went up
best of 7. Yeah,
it might be. And we went up to. I won the first 3, and then he won the next 3, and then I won the deciding one. And
of
it
course
was
you
like
did. You're the best.
I am the best at that out of one match.
So hang it up now.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Go out on a high note. It feels like one of those games that you can, like Nidhogg, where it's very simple, but you can develop a lot of nuance to. And the thing that's funny about it to me is that it's made by the guy who made QWOP, and it really does feel like a Nidhogg style game as interpreted by the QWOP guy, because it
Just the weird deliberately slightly sloppy, weird people just sort of blobbing all over each other stuff.
well, like Nidhogg is much like a traditional fighting game, even though it's really simple in that it's entirely like digital. Like every interaction has an exactly opposite like block. Like everything is very crisp. Whereas PoleRiders feels totally analog. It feels like this weird blobby physics simulation where everything's kind of wobbly, and you're up on if you vault up on the pole, like you can sort of wave
kind of balance
one way or
it
the
around,
other. Yeah, and and the fact that the ball is on a line that itself is
it has a little bit of weight to it.
yeah,
and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah,
There's physical simulation going on there. It just has this very wobbly feel to it, but it nevertheless battles can get really tense.
well, it gives you a little bit of the actual imprecision that this might actually have. Were for some reason two people trapped on a 2D plane trying to kick a kettleball back and
Well,
forth.
that's why I
with
like the
pole
game
vaulting
so
poles.
much. It feels like an invented game that you would make up with your buddies in like the
Except
fifth
that
grade.
it's physically impossible.
Right.
They're
But
vaulting 20 feet in the air to kick a ball. But
But
it
it's
is
like a Calvin balls type rule system of
Right.
All right, okay, we got this cable, we got this ball, we can hang from it. Oh no, we never get these poles. Wait, what if we also like?
Yeah.
It's really
if this world and this physics system existed, you could imagine people coming upon this game design.
yeah. It's fantastic. You should definitely check it out.
Yeah.
And that guy's cool, actually. We did an interview. Steve and I, and Nick, actually, I think, did an interview with him that you'll hear later, assuming the sound quality is good enough. And it's really fascinating. That guy he's a philosopher at the University of Oxford, and is just an incredibly intelligent, incredibly well-spoken guy, which is really cool because he makes these games that are just bonkers.
It's good that he's represented at this event by PoleRiders.
I know.
And 4 DDR dance mats with a bad like vector art rock climber on the TV screen as like, oh, that's what that guy
I
is.
thought it was all pixel art.
Oh, maybe it is pixel art, but it's just very smoothly animated.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It looks like
Prince of Persia style.
all of his stuff looks like Prince of Persia out of this world or something.
Yeah.
I really
He's a really smart guy.
I didn't get to play it. I would have loved to play that game.
We did play
18-person Joust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we've
kind of
talked about
rotate-
Joust on here too, right?
I don't know if we have. It was one of our games of the year, like honorable mentions, but I don't know if we've talked about it.
GOTY.cx.
Yeah, we've never even mentioned on any of these casts that we did a Games of the Year. We did a Games of the Year this year, like the first one we've done since 2009, which was for 2008 games.
Yep.
And it's at goty.cx, goty.cx. So you should check them out. We put a bunch of good games on there.
Yeah, one of the games that we talked about was Johann Sebastian Joust, which was at this party. It's an odd game in that it basically it requires a computer to play because the computer is actually running the code, but all you actually are doing when you're playing the game is holding a PlayStation Move controller. How the hell do you describe this game?
It's a motion-based game where imagine if your Move controller was a cup of water or something that could be jostled from your hand. And the goal is to jostle somebody else's controller.
The goal is to be the last person left with an unperturbed Move controller.
As soon as your Move controller is jostled past an extent, it explodes.
It explodes.
And goes
It
out.
turns red and goes. So
But the cool thing is the faster the music goes, the background music, the more more liberally you can move your controller.
Yeah.
And you can move across whatever play field.
So the game by default is playing Bach, obviously, based on the name, and the music speed ramps up and down, so you get the boop, and then when it starts going fast, everyone runs around like a complete crazy person because they know that they won't get knocked out. Anyway, I don't know if we're explaining this in any way that makes sense.
It's fine. People can look it up. But we played a build that was allowed for many more players. I think that by default it supports 7.
It's 7, which is the
Bluetooth
usually
standard.
perceived maximum Bluetooth standard, but I guess they figured out that they can network 3 computers together and have 18 people playing.
Yeah.
So it was 3 teams of 6 up in this room at this party.
I thought it was 3 teams? I thought it was 2 teams.
3 teams.
No, it was red, blue, and yellow.
Oh, okay.
Or blue, yellow, and purple or something like that. Yeah. You just weren't aware of the 3rd team.
Because remember, you always had to look left, and that was the blue guys. and you had to
Oh,
look
yeah.
right,
I
and
got
there were
knocked out
yellow
by one
guys.
of the
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
second at one point by one of the guys right next to me.
And then Jake got assaulted by a flying Zimmerman.
Yeah. We noticed halfway through that Eric Zimmerman was sitting at the other side of the thing, and
He was
he
on the
was
yellow team.
Eric Zimmerman, a game industry gadfly, perhaps one.
the recorder on which we are recording this podcast is sitting on top of Rules of Play by Eric Zimmerman.
And Katie Salem.
That's true.
We're also recording on an Eric Zimmerman podcast.
We're recording on a Zoom recorder.
The Zoom recorder.
I guess we
Zimmerman.
have dubbed the Eric Zimmerman.
Eric Zimmerman. Yeah, that was looking across this field of 18 people and seeing Zimmerman catch my eye and then hide his move controller behind his back and sort of start like trying to give me like the Cobra stare. I didn't know quite what was going on, and then he just leapt at me and almost knocked me to the ground. But
Zimmerman basically took on the role of a suicide bomber.
Yeah, Zimmerman was a
He
suicide
kind of
bombing.
would jump and turn his whole body as sideways as he could to see if he could get not
Like,
just
take out as many people as he could.
Outstretch his arms
Yeah.
so that he would just bash everybody as he flew.
Yeah, it was an interesting strategy.
Yeah, it was.
It was fine.
I saw Chris sneak attack a guy. It was pretty good.
Yeah, that was my crowning Joust achievement.
It was really.
It was
good.
cool. It was
I
funny
so
actually.
bad at that game.
There's one guy left on the opposing team, and then me and my buddy Owen, who
Your brother?
I said a thing that isn't correct.
Oh, I heard you.
You got me.
I heard
You got me,
I heard you
Jake.
say brother when you meant to say
did
buddy.
It. You
Okay.
did it. My buddy Owen, who I know from Boston, actually, he's an AI guy, like PhD candidate at MIT. He and I were the last guys left on our team. Then there was another guy on the opposing team.
It was probably
who was-
Zimmerman.
It wasn't Zimmerman. It was this huge guy who had been,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I saw.
who had been in
yeah,
like
yeah.
every game at
That
that
guy,
point.
yeah.
That guy did not want to give up his controller, and he and Owen were like in doing the kind of strafe,
Right, the sort of
dance.
strafe circle.
Yeah. And I got to sneak around behind him and do the fucking like stealth move assassination, the Assassin's Creed lock on thing.
That guy's dead now.
He's dead.
By which you mean you
unfortunately.
walked near him and then touched his move controller?
So that was fun. It's a good game. Joust is great. Are there any ways people can own that game? I guess if you pledge
If you
to Venus
back-
I think
Patrol.
if you got it
Back
through
to
Venus Patrol, but I don't know if it's out
Yeah.
publicly yet other than that.
Yeah.
Sort of like if you back the Idle Thumbs podcast on Kickstarter, you get 30 Flights of Loving by Brendan Chung.
That's true.
That's a thing I heard you can do.
That's accurate.
Yeah, Amelia played. My wife played 30 Flights of Loving, whatever build, the latest that we have. Last night,
She said it was very nice.
she really liked it as a non-gamer.
Yeah.
She also really likes
anthropologist.
Gravity Bone.
How did she finish the game and still have confusion as to whether W makes you go forward? That's
Well,
the one.
I kind of pieced all her quotes together to make one mega quote.
Oh,
Like,
so that
W
was
makes
from
you-
when she was right at the beginning.
Right,
of the
right,
game.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I thought that was her concluding remark. Oh, I see. So W makes you go forward. That's like my dad looking at Zelda. And, oh, so you navigate through this maze. Like, that would be if my dad had played through all of Zelda and then that was his.
that was his
Oh, I see.
takeaway.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think she was really, yeah. It was funny watching her gravitate to things that are just passively in the world. It was exactly what you want. I wish Brendan would have been standing there to watch,
Right.
kind of watch this playthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really great. I'm excited for people to get their hands on this game. PC Gamer UK liked it though.
Yeah, Graham Smith
Yeah.
over at PC Gamer wrote a really, really nice blog post about 30 Flights of Loving. I think he said this game tells a better story in 13 minutes than most games do in 13 hours.
That was the headline.
Yeah.
That was very nice. So
was super nice.
get ready for that.
Prepare yourself.
Anyway,
What else is happening at GDC?
I don't know.
Well, we
should
interviewed some
probably-
guys.
Yeah, who
We
did
should
you end
probably-
up talking to?
So we talked to, and I don't, okay, so I can't promise all these people will actually appear because the sound quality on some of them might be too bad to actually release, but they were all cool people, so I'll mention them anyway. We talked to Christina Norman, who is she's a designer at Riot Games, and she was formerly at BioWare. She worked on the Mass Effect series there. Now she works on League of Legends. We talked to Tom Francis, who is a writer at PC Gamer and also the designer of Gunpoint, which is a really excellent game. It was in the IGF this year, and I liked it a lot. It was up for the design award. It didn't win, but it's a really great game. So when it comes out, you should definitely get it. We should talk about it on a future podcast. And then we talked to Derek Yu, who is the
And Spelunky and
creator
Aquaria.
of Spelunky, and the artist on Aquaria.
He also runs TigSource.
Yes, he does, and he's a really cool guy as well. And Spelunky also was in the IGF, and then we talked to Bennett Foddy. I mentioned we talked to him earlier. He's the creator of QWOP and PoleRiders, and also GIRP, and all of his games are at foddy.net. They're all Flash games, and you can play them all for free. And I think he's released iPhone versions of one or two of them. And then finally, we talked to Ed Key, who is one of the creators of Proteus.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yep.
Exciting.
I played a little bit of Proteus. It's cool.
Should talk about that on the next Progress Cast.
Maybe I will. I chased a frog around. So get ready for that.
I will be ready. All right.
Yeah. Enjoy these.
Goodbye.
Sonically fascinating and enjoyable interviews.
Yes. It's GDC 2012, and this is the first Idle Thumbs Conf Blast. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Steve Gaynor.
And we're joined by Christina Norman, who is a game developer at Riot Games, formerly of BioWare, where she worked on the Mass Effect series.
Hello, people on the internets.
Hi there. I'm on the internet, too.
Yeah.
This is the first time we're trying this. Steve and I are walking around with a recorder, and we're going to grab people we know in the games industry who are cool to sit down and just talk for 10 minutes or so about stuff they've been seeing or what they've been up to or what they think about video games or the industry or the conference. So we don't know if it'll work or not, but we're going to try it.
How's it going,
Yay.
Christina?
It's going good. I've been enjoying hanging out with you guys, talking about all kinds of exciting things that aren't going to be on this podcast.
I know, we've burned
We
all the
weren't
costs
recording
already.
it, so.
Yeah.
Well, how long did you get in for the conference this weekend?
Yeah, I've been here since Sunday, so I've been just going to random summits and lectures so far.
Yeah.
It's
Have you
been
seen
interesting.
anything that's exploded your brain?
Well, the thing about GDC is when you've gone for like 4 or 5 years in a row,
Yeah.
it starts to feel a little repetitive to some degree. And I think that's because the content is really, really focused on people who are newer, who are learning about the games industry. So you do tend to get a little bit of repetitive stuff. But
Well, I think the corollary of that is that you also get people who are really sort of seasoned veterans of the games industry who end up kind of honing their talks over many years. And so if you've been to the show for a number of years, often you've seen, they might be really great
Yeah,
talks,
yeah.
but you've seen
Seen
a
an
very
earlier
similar
version of it. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And you become more discerning over time. You start to
Yeah,
learn, it's like,
definitely.
I remember this guy, he did this talk. This looks like it's about half the same.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
probably not
Well,
going to bother
and
to see it.
you and I were talking about the other day how we find that, and after a certain point, going a certain number of years to GDC, you stop the novelty of kind of some of the more purely entertainment-focused talks.
Yeah.
Right.
Lose a bit of their
The
lose a bit of
feel-good
their luster.
talks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like the feel-good talks are really fun to attend, but you don't necessarily learn anything. And,
Yeah, it's
and I'm
cool
not
to
here
talk
to be
about that.
entertained. Ideally, I want to learn stuff, so I really try and focus on going to. And it's kind of it kind of sucks actually when you go to a talk. You're like, maybe I'll learn something at this talk, and I'm skipping this talk that I know would be fun. And then when you don't learn anything, then you're like,
God, I could have been having fun.
I could have been having fun, and that's like a bit of a letdown. But I think things are going to pick up. The first 2 days are definitely more new to the industry focused. So I think,
a lot of tutorials. And stuff.
yeah, I think the rest of the week is going to be good. There's always good talks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, you're working on League of Legends at Riot Games. Is
Yep.
there anything like in particular that is relevant to the work on that game that you're like looking forward to, or that you came to the conference hoping you would find out more about? Kind of
You
stuff?
know, not really, but how can I put this? Like, I'm working on League of Legends right now, but first and foremost, I consider myself to be a designer. So I'm interested in the craft and the art of design, all aspects of it. I look at GDC as a way for me to sort of catch up on all the stuff that's been going on in the industry that isn't directly relevant to me. So,
Yeah.
like so far, I've been really focusing on social and mobile gaming, which is something I'm really interested in. Doesn't relate to what I do at all. But hey, I'm a designer. I'm not specifically a League of Legends designer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's evident in the fact that you came from BioWare, where you worked on really sort of very focused single-player games.
Yep.
And
Multiplayer now too.
Well, that's true. Did you work on that in Mass
I
Effect
did,
3?
I
Okay,
did.
cool. So yeah, and you've been at Riot like 6 months now or so?
Yeah, about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was at BioWare for 5 or 6 years
Right,
before
right.
that.
I mean, I don't know if this is the kind of stuff that we want to talk about in this cast, but I mean, I'd be curious to know, as someone who is a designer who's worked in such incredibly different fields, like what was that like going to Riot and then professionally then working on almost the other end of the spectrum from the design side?
So, like for me personally, I'm very end product focused. And by that, I mean, what I want is I just want the games that I'm working on to be games that people want to play and that they get that enjoyment from. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter how you get there. It's all just like, are people happy? Are they excited to play this game? Are they passionate about it? So, BioWare, has very successful games. The Mass Effect franchise, I worked on all 3 of those. People are pretty passionate and excited about those. And League of Legends, it's a totally different audience, but the passion is still there, and that's what really drives me. So the specific kind of game design I'm doing, it's more just how do I get to that goal.
Yeah. And by the way, the day that we're recording this is the day that Mass Effect 3 came out. So congratulations, because you did a lot of work on that game.
Yeah, thanks. And I haven't had a chance to really check the reviews or anything, so hopefully it turns out good.
Yeah, you always have your fingers crossed because you weren't there for when it actually started and everything.
Yeah.
But as far as I can tell, people are really into it. So.
Yeah, but it's actually really cool because the other 2 Mass Effects, I knew it inside and out. When I play 3, I'm actually going to get some surprises since I wasn't there at the end.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah, and you're wearing your Renegade shirt today.
Yep, I'm wearing my BioWare Renegade shirt because I'm a bit of a renegade, but I still love BioWare, still love Mass Effect.
Yeah. And silently, we're also joined by Marek Bronstring, sitting quietly near the microphone.
On the other side of the microphone, just to make his voice extra hollow and distant.
Can you possibly say guys?
Sure, guys.
Thank you.
Left, more men.
All right.
Marek's role in GDC coverage is to
Exactly. I'm
observe
glad
and
to
judge.
to this intelligent discussion.
It's you lend an ambience to the whole proceeding.
Gravitas.
Yeah.
If you will.
I don't know. Should we just like
Wrap it up?
yeah just break off and run away from the microphone? Whatever.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Christina.
Yeah, it's been
Thanks.
really great talking to you.
I'm
Thanks
going
for
to
sitting
start
down.
listening to Idle Thumbs now, and I'm going to donate to the Idle Thumbs Kickstarter.
At idlethumbs.net/Kickstarter. You heard it here first. I mean, not first,
You
but you definitely
almost
heard it
certainly
here.
didn't hear it here first, but close enough.
All right. Talk to you,
Yeah.
talk to you guys
Thanks
later.
again.
This is the GDC 2012 Idle Thumbs Conf Blast, the second one. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Steve Gaynor.
And
Tom Francis.
oh man, Tom Francis preempted me. He is the designer of Gunpoint and also, still, as far as I know, a game journalist.
Yeah, it hasn't stopped yet.
So how's this is your first GDC?
Yeah, it's my
And-
first 8 years as a journalist and 1 year as a developer. This is my first GDC.
This
is the Game Developers Conference.
Oh, now yeah.
You're
Now
welcome.
you're allowed.
Now I see the pattern.
Well, and not
Oh,
only
really?
that, you're here. Your first time here is as a finalist in the Independent Game Festival.
Yeah.
That's fairly incredible. Well done.
How long have you been
That's-
working on your game, Gunpoint?
2 years, but
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
I thought it was only about a year.
yeah, it's only about a year. I was going to claim that now.
Oh,
If I
yeah.
can get away with that, I will.
You were
But
mistaken.
it's been only on weekends, really, because
Right. Sure.
daytime job, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, how, having been a journalist for so long, I mean, asking this is relevant to me in particular, I suppose, because I was also a journalist and then went into development. What's it like now being here and looking at it from the perspective of a developer?
It's basically awesome. I much prefer being a developer. Like, I much prefer being seen as a developer.
Yeah.
But somehow, like, everyone's so much more open and candid with you. Even people who know I'm a journalist will just
Right.
talk about the innermost secrets of what they're
But
working
now
on.
you can go and
And
spoil all
those
that.
hot
Just-
scoops on
yeah,
the
exactly.
internet.
But I
No.
think that's part of just the IGF experience in general. Like, because as a journalist, you probably mostly cover big commercial game development, right?
Yeah, we did cover indie stuff as well.
Yeah. But I feel like when you're at the IGF, just everybody's just like, oh yeah, here's what I'm working on. Talking to this company about this, maybe, and it's just like you don't have lawyers,
Yeah.
or
PR
like,
people
yeah,
and-
HR getting mad at you or whatever. So.
It's infectious too. I've like just been spilling ridiculous plans I haven't like thought through properly yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
So
Just
please go ahead. Spill those plans
ridiculous
into our
plans.
microphone, or you don't have to do that.
I can tell you I want to make an RTS,
Oh, cool.
and
Wow.
I've been seeing a lot of AI developers rant and taking careful notes on what
Nice.
they're ranting about.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
all the crazy shit they do. If you I saw a talk by Mike Robbins about how Spring Command 2's AI works, and it uses something called a neural net,
Yeah.
where it like
A learning computer.
okay, you know what it is.
Oh, he's watched Terminator.
It's yeah, it's just they basically don't tell the AI what a good idea is and just make it randomly choose a thing to do, and just remember how well it worked out, and then
Yeah.
run millions and millions of simulations, and it just figures it all out. So you don't have to like when you change the balance of the game, it only works in terms of DPS and HP, so it doesn't matter what DPS and HP of those units are, you can keep tweaking, and the AI will still function in a really interesting way.
Yeah, because you just run the sim again and it tests and figures out what the best thing to do is in any situation.
But you don't even have to run the simulation again unless you change the behavior, because the way it assesses situations isn't on, oh, he's got 6 engineers and 3 tanks. It's, oh, he's got this many DPS and this many HP.
I see. Oh, right, yeah, because what it's doing is making a graph of, just those numbers and what to do based on the ratio and stuff.
And I'm getting really interested in the idea of a game where you tweak how it decides that stuff.
Right. I mean, something like that is probably more appropriate to a game like Supreme Commander than to a game like StarCraft, just because something like StarCraft is so much more about the small-scale, unusual tactics of different units, whereas Supreme Commander is very large, theater, kind of aggregate force versus aggregate force kind of stuff.
Totally like opposite ends of the scale. StarCraft's so much about like abilities and micro.
Right.
And even like, I mean, I watch a lot of professional StarCraft, and it's amazing that even those guys can't put their zealots in the front. You hear the comment, it's like, you have to put the melee units at the front of the unit and the range guys at the back. And they can't get it right because the whole game is about managing that. That's like the highest level of skill, is to get your melee guys at the front and your range guys at the back. Whereas stuff like Supreme Commander is trying to do all of that for you.
Yeah, so you're going to be in the IGF Awards tonight, and
we're going to lose to Spelunky.
I just played your game in the IGF and I loved it, but I forget what your it's design?
Yeah, design. Okay. And I guess everyone's up for the audience award, like all finalists.
Right.
For that. So I'm going to lose design to Spelunky and audience to Frozen Synapse. Got it all planned now.
You heard it here first.
You'll hear it here after the winners are announced.
That's true.
You'll hear it last.
I find your game really interesting. Like when you're talking about making RTS, because my snap reaction in my head, and it's wrong, but my impression was like, oh, that's interesting, because you're, again, wrong. Because you're not really making a real-time game now. But you are. But Gunpoint, it feels a lot more about states and, like, tactics and long-term strategy and, like, reading the board, basically. It's not, like, a real-time game in the sense of, like, you're reacting frequently. Yeah. You don't really react to hardly anything, because if a guard has spotted you, you're probably already getting shot, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also the game is entirely predictable, in the sense that if you know how the systems work well enough, once you've made your plan, I mean, you can miscalculate, but it's possible to conclusively know exactly what's going to happen based on the things you do.
And both those things are intentional. Like it's, I really wanted to avoid stuff where you have to be skillful enough to pull off something under time pressure.
Right.
But I mean, I want you to be able to plan, and I definitely want it to be predictable in the way you say, because that's what I love about Deus Ex, is that the rules themselves are consistent, and I know how it will work. Yeah. And when it surprises me, it's because the simulation is so complex.
Right.
But in terms of the real-time thing, I wanted it to be basically an intellectual game. So if you're smart enough, you can do well at it, regardless of your finger skill. Because they have shitty fingers.
And something that I like about it is, when I've been playing it, there have been situations where I've seen a problem I want to solve that the first thing I think is, I could solve that by like pressing a button and then waiting for a guy to go through a door and then pressing the button again. And that, it's not a lot of dexterity, but it's still kind of timing, And then I think for 1 second more, and I'm like, oh, well, I could press the button and then I could wire the light switch that he's going to be walking to close the door on him, so and figure out a smart way just to press one button for him to lock himself in. And I think the game is really good at giving the player opportunities like that to feel smart by optimizing and by like kind of tricking the AI, which is fun to do, even though it's not totally necessary to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
And the first time that I locked a guy, and this was unnecessary to actually complete the level, but I remember one time being extraordinarily pleased when I had a guy lock himself in a room, and then in trying to leave the room, knocking himself out by smashing a door into his face because it was hooked up to the light switch he was trying to turn on. So I essentially locked a guy into a dark, non-unlockable room. So a guy was just trapped in essentially a room of walls, and then had him just smash a door into his own face and get knocked unconscious. And I'm like, well, this game is pretty good. Yeah, I have to say.
I've definitely done that myself, but with me like pulling the trigger, because I'll like unwire the switch from the door so he can't open it, and then turn the lights off. And so now he's just patrolling, stuck inside this little room, and then I'll just wait till he gets in front of the door, and then I press the button to open it to knock him out. Because you could be much less efficient, just open the door and then like sneak up behind him and pounce on him or whatever. But
Well, it's something I go back and forth on is whether that stuff should be required at any point, because I sometimes get testers kind of, I don't know if they're complaining or just kind of pointing out that there's these really complex solutions, but you don't have to do them, and you can do something really simple, and that works. And some people seem kind of pissed off by that, but for me, when I'm playing a game and I discover something like that, I want it to be unnecessary. I want it to be because
I feel like I'm so starved these days for games that do operate like that. I mean, it's just so, it almost feels like a relief when I play a game where I can stumble upon something like that the developer probably is aware of. I mean, you've probably come across it yourself many times, but is not being so just forcefully telegraphed by the game that I know that I did it because every other person did it on level 4 right here, because that's what the game is very narrowly directing you to do. There's just something nice about having that at least illusion of coming up with an original solution yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's the fact that a door can open towards a guard and that knocks him out is something that's never explicitly explained yet. And I keep going back and forth about whether to tell anyone, because
don't do it.
If they never discover it, that's a shame. But if they do discover it, I want it to be because they discovered it.
Yeah, well, here's my other thought on that, is that is, I mean, the core conceit of the game is obviously fairly absurd. Like, I mean, it's a...
I don't know what you mean, Chris.
but
bouncy pants? What's absurd about that?
Hyper trousers are cool.
But I think
bouncy pants would be ridiculous.
But it's all within a fairly sort of like relatively serious fictional underpinning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all kind of a sort of straight, almost sci-fi-ish conceit of the rewiring thing. I mean, whereas the door knocking out a guy is basically slapstick.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that it's not explicitly acknowledged by the game and the fiction, because it is a little bit one step further than the kind of straight premise. Yeah. But the fact that it's supported is fantastic. I mean, that's the kind of... I was talking on a recent episode, actually, about Thumbs, about mechanical humor. And I think that to me is a just classic example of that. And that's the kind... I think you have a little bit of fictional wiggle room when it comes to that particular kind of humor in games, where you don't... It doesn't need to all be entirely justified fictionally. And the discoverability of that is itself a really big part of what makes the joke almost work.
Yeah, and my hope is that the serious kind of tone or the serious look of the world is all quite, it's kind of realistic, like it's stylized, but it was important to me
the
that
proportions
the characters,
are typical.
exactly, proportions of a normal human being. And to me, that always makes slapstick stuff funnier. Like if I feel the game has really big exaggerated heads and comedy characters and they're doing their kind of like, look at us, we're a wacky thing. When something wacky happens in it, it's less funny because the developers making the joke. It's like, haha, look at this.
Yeah.
Whereas if the world is serious and you've done something that's funny, I think that gets with belly laugh.
Well, it also acknowledges that is the exact kind of humor that happens in the real world. I mean, the real world is not a cartoon location. No, but I mean, when a physical goofy thing happens, like when your friend slips on a banana peel, I mean, I've actually seen that. Not
what
kidding.
life are you living?
No, I've seen that happen for real. But the fact that it was not staged and set up to be a joke, or at least not explicitly so.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what makes
that it's happening within your normal world.
Exactly.
Is what makes it funny, right?
Yeah.
It stands out from everything else.
Yep.
With the door thing, I feel like it's such, with stuff like that, it's such an edge case. Like, it's not a core strategy.
Yeah.
So I feel like you would just kind of like, you could script something where it's almost certainly going to happen on every playthrough, so the player can observe it. But then that's it's going to, since you don't have to do it, and it's really not that helpful to do it almost any of the time. It's
almost always
it'll just ruin it for the people that would have found it on their own.
I used to have a puzzle in there where the only way to take care of this guard was to make him knock himself out, and I tried to not tell people explicitly how to do it, so I had like 3 or 4 different hints that would say, when you open a door, it'll open away from the thing that opens it. And I would say, when you open a door, it opens with some force. And, when guards open doors, this can happen. And I still had like a tester who he went through every hint that I'd given him and explained how he misinterpreted it, so he still didn't know the doors were open.
Right.
And it was just like a load of effort to teach people something that they prefer discovering on their own.
Well, and I think that goes to that sort of reinforces this discussion in the sense that I suspect one of the reasons it never quite connected with them is because it is a fairly silly thing to happen. It is slightly outside of the tone. So, not being if you are not personally obsessed with making it happen, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like the people who find it is hilarious, people who don't, fine. world stays what it is today.
I think some of it is also about contrivance, because you have that that one moment in like the third level or whatever, defenestration, where you essentially train. You can knock guys through a window by pouncing on them, but you're not training it. It's just like, okay, you have to knock this guy out. You'll knock him out by pouncing on him, and it's a natural reaction to that. So you're making someone do something very straightforward, pounce on the guy to knock him out, and they see this side. Whereas like the trait forcing the door knocking a guy out is so much more contrived that it's not in the same ballpark.
All
I
that
think
stuff
it works
comes
really well the way it is in the defenestration level.
That's good. All that stuff kind of comes from I play it one way. I managed to do something cool, and it was only because I happened to be over there when that happened, and I tried really hard to make it happen. And then when it happened, it was cool. And then I go back in level edge and just move it closer to the window.
That's fantastic. I mean, that was one of my favorites. I mean, I really enjoyed this game right from the first time I played it. And it was in an earlier state than it is now. And when I saw, I don't even remember where, but I've seen you explain where a lot of that stuff came from, and that it made me like the game even more. Like the notion that a lot of actual formalized mechanics, or at least conventions, were born out of essentially you operating in the game's sandbox is really cool. I mean, that's the kind of thing that comes directly out of a game that is a simulation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it reminds me of the stuff that like Harvey Smith has talked about with Dishonored. How like QA was like, oh, if you chain these powers together, you can fly all over the place. And he's like, that's cool. We'll support that now.
Yeah.
And it's not something that they wrote in a design document and executed. It's something that they discovered during development and supported, which is great.
Yeah.
Something I really wanted to do was make a game that played the way I played Deus Ex. So it's nothing like as good as Deus Ex, not as complex as Deus Ex. But sometimes when like some of my friends don't like Deus Ex and they watch me play it and they're like, oh wow, that sounds awesome. What you just did was ridiculous.
Classic idle thumbs situation.
And so it's quite interesting. I haven't really thought about it like this before, but I guess I've ended up like for the people who get it and like it, a game which you will play in the same stupid experimental way that I like to play games. So I'm trying to suit it to myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking to us about Gunpoint and your IGF experience and everything.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the show. Good luck tonight.
Yeah, bad luck.
In the past.
I don't even want to beat Spelunky. Like, it's so much better than my game. I would like to see it win.
Bad luck then.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, good luck.
Reason.
This is the Idle Thumbs Conf Blast, the third one. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Steve Gaynor.
And we're joined by Derek Yu. Hello.
Hi.
This guy made Spelunky.
Yep.
Is that how you say it?
Spelunky.
Spelunky. I always...
People say
I always get
Spelunky,
made
but
fun
that's
of
fine.
saying
weird.
Spelunky.
See, I like that you pronounce it that way.
Yeah.
Spelunky.
You do love it. You've always loved it.
It doesn't seem appropriate.
No, fine.
It's not bad. I both ways of pronouncing it is fine with me.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. So you're here in the IGF, and you are nominated for the big award.
Yep. No pressure. I
mean, this
is the big one.
Spelunky seems like it's been in development and has existed in various forms for a while. I mean, does this feel like it's a culmination of things at all?
It does. It feels like it's coming to the end of a really, really strange journey that started off as a very small thing, in my opinion. The original freeware game, I kind of just started it on a lark. I had some inspiration with the randomly generated levels and stuff like that, and took it from there. And to take it to Xbox and now to IGF Grand Prize is it's one of those things where you look back and you're kind of just like, how did this happen?
Well, good luck at the awards.
Thank you.
Because you're also up for design, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, it's interesting actually that now that I think about what you just said, is that I feel like even though Spelunky's in the IGF now, I feel like it's actually been a stated influence on other games that have been in the IGF like over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
There's I feel like Spelunky comes up often as a game that other indies have pointed to as an influence.
Yeah.
But I mean now that's happened while still in this lead up to your game actually ending up in the festival.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I play, tons of people played Spelunky years ago when it
Yeah,
came out,
yeah.
the Game Maker version. But that was, you never entered that into the competition or anything, right? Or did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So you kind of, did you know you were going to do, like a commercial or whatever, finished version, so you intentionally waited until then, or like?
I didn't actually.
We don't have sirens, but we have that guy.
It's the classic idle thumb siren.
I didn't, but yeah, I had other reasons for not entering the original version of Spelunky, even though some people told me, oh, you should, because it's like, I think it's a cool game and whatever. Part of it was that I wasn't sure whether I was going to enter IGF again, because I hadn't completely made up my mind about what I felt the IGF is about and what other people thought IGF was about. Is it when I was in the IGF with Alec Holoka for Aquaria, it was this, we were complete newcomers to the scene, and I think there are a lot of people that still feel like, oh, the IGF is really for that. It's not so much a competition, like a best of the best competition, but it's more of like a best of the new competition. So
I see.
those are two different ways that people looked at it, and I can see, because I was someone who was completely new, and I know exactly how that affected us then, in a positive way. I can kind of see both sides of the argument, and I was so there's that. I was kind of avoiding making a decision about that, and entering would have been making a decision for me about it. And I think the other reason why I didn't enter was just because it felt like a smaller game to me, and even though people really enjoyed it, and a lot of people were influenced by it in various ways, I was still, to me, it was still a small game, and I didn't have concrete plans to develop a better version or a more expanded version, but I still didn't feel completely comfortable entering it because it was such a small, kind of like a for fun project.
Yeah, like a lark or whatever.
A lark, yeah, exactly.
Well, because the thing you mentioned about newcomers versus old hands kind of thing is, it reminds me of, if I'm not mistaken, Edmund McMillan didn't enter Binding of Isaac into the IGF, and I was kind of wondering, because I judged the IGF, and I was like, where's Binding of Isaac in here? I want to nominate it for design because it's a really well designed game, and I don't know if he ever made any statement about it, but I wonder if it was the kind of thing where he's like, I've been in IGF stuff before. I don't want to take away from other people's chances of being highlighted by putting my game in or something.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Edmund, but I feel like for him, it's probably more about just the stress of entering.
I see.
And I think with all the stuff they're going through with
that game
Super
was,
Meat Boy and stuff.
Binding of Isaac was expressly for him a kind of relaxation project. Almost.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense too. Yeah, because I mean, entering the IGF is you have to keep up with the builds and deal with submitting it and all that kind of stuff. Right?
And there's a lot of just emotional stress that goes with being a part of it. Whether you get nominated or not, there's just this big kind of it's just an extra burden.
Sure. Yeah. You're constantly wondering am I going to get nominated? And then sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Am I going to make it to the next level?
Right.
Yeah, like a video game. I don't know if you've played those before, but it's it's about getting to the next level.
Oh, that I've played. I know you're talking about. I've done that.
Okay.
So how's the show been for you? How's GDC been?
It's been great so far. I saw a few of the IGS talks yesterday, and I really liked them. I saw the failure workshop, the audio panel, and the clones discussion, clones talk.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I've been working on the game, and then today was the first day of the expo, so I've just been manning the booth and trying to kind of contain my nervousness.
We got a laugh track for this.
Those people found it hilarious
as well. Sorry, it was a little mistimed. That was a good answer. They weren't supposed to do that.
There was a joke in there somewhere. I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great. And there's another couple of days that people are going to be coming down and playing. Have you got something that I found interesting talking to some other indies is a lot of times indies work in kind of isolation, at their house or whatever, and they'll send out builds to people and get notes back and stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't have that opportunity to actually watch people play their game live and see how they play it. So, have you gotten to do a lot of live play testing, or are you kind of seeing people play Spelunky live for maybe not the first time, but is it like a new experience?
I mean, I've watched my friends play and stuff,
Yeah.
but really it's PAX and GDC.
Oh yeah, you guys have been at PAX. That's right.
Yeah, we were at PAX, and that was a great chance to watch people play. And I think watching people play, the indication has been that we're on the right track with the design and stuff like that. So I haven't done a whole lot to get lots of live testing going in between. Mostly just been having people play and then giving me feedback, and then like a few points here and there when I'm watching people play live.
Yeah,
like at these conventions and stuff.
It's always, speaking of emotional, trauma, it's always fucking scary just to hand someone you've never met before the controller and be like, so do whatever you want to this thing I made.
Yeah.
And maybe they're totally into it, or maybe they just run into a wall for 10 minutes and they're like, this sucks. And
right.
You have to figure out why both of those things happen between two different people.
Yeah, I think the multiplayer aspect has definitely helped a lot, especially at these conventions where there are a lot of people around, and you can. Most people are playing multiplayer.
I never actually got to play it co-op because I didn't have anybody around, two controllers.
But it's actually a great way to play the game for the first time because, even if you don't know exactly what's going on, you can help each other, and it's.
Does it have like revival mechanic kind of stuff?
There is, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So it's a little bit easier in that sense too.
It sounds nice because it's like a roguelike, so it has like sudden permadeath a lot of times. But it's single player. But if in co-op you can like keep each other in the game, that's cool. That sounds nice.
Yeah, someone mentioned to me that it's like a roguelike. Multiplayer in roguelikes has always been this very, very sticky issue with only like a couple of roguelikes that have even been attempted in. It always involves some kind of like hybrid turn-based real-time play. It's very.
So you're talking more like traditional.
Traditional, like real traditional roguelikes. And it's just been a difficult issue, but people want to do it because it seems cool. And someone mentioned that Spelunky's kind of like the first game to give a multiplayer roguelike experience. So I had never thought about it like that, but I think it's cool, and I was happy to hear that just because it has been such a issue with traditional roguelikes.
Because when I've seen people playing multiplayer of Spelunky, it reminds me of multiplayer in New Super Mario Brothers for the Wii.
Sure,
but it seems like having the additional like randomization aspect to it. It seems like there's more there because like when you play co-op and you play through something that's really static, there's only so many times you can do that before you kind of expend the possibility space there. But if you and your friends can just get together whenever and you're like, all right, let's roll up a new Spelunky map and try to get through it, that seems like that meshes really nice. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I did think about New Super Mario Brothers Wii when I was designing the multiplayer for Spelunky, because I had a lot of fun with it, but there were aspects of that I didn't like. Like I didn't like the bubble mechanic, which it just, I don't know. It ended up feeling almost like a cheat in the game, and I think that's something that they've started adding a lot of that kind of stuff in their games, especially the Mario series. Like New Super Mario Brothers, I think had like if you die a certain number of times, there's like a block appears at the beginning of the level that you can then hit that sort of plays the level for you almost. I think I don't remember the mechanic exactly, but they're starting to add a lot of just helper mechanics to help to get players through the game, and I'm really not a big fan of that type of stuff.
Well, I think that's probably a big reason there's been, it seems like a growing audience for roguelikes or kind of roguelike likes, the sort of when you get a couple degrees away, but you still have that feeling of that really intense challenge and the like strongly imposed kind of rule system and often random elements, as in your game, and things like Binding of Isaac and even something like Super Meat Boy, which is not at all a roguelike, but again is very just there's
Doesn't
no
have
exceptions
any-
made
yeah.
just arbitrarily to help you along in that respect. And it feels like that's something that's a really strong current in independent game design right now. And I suspect a big reason for that is because games like the Mario series traditionally are the kinds of games. I mean, Mario's has never been a super difficult game, but traditionally speaking, Mario games always were very rigid in their application of the rule set. And like when those franchises are the ones that then become extraordinarily forgiving and extremely sort of fuzzy in that respect, I think that there's a huge gap that opens up for people to still have that experience of engaging with sort of strict system. And like a lot of games have bubbled up in that respect, and there's been like those are games that I think traditionally people would not expect to like light the world on fire. You know, like such conventional wisdom is so much about just allow the player to complete this experience with don't go overboard with friction and with that kind of stuff. But it does not seem to be the case in independent development right now, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about like the new Super Mario Brothers games and stuff, and I definitely study them for the good things as well as the bad things. But there's the good things about Super Mario Brothers, the new modern games, even continuations of these classic series. Like, I really like the increase in the production values, and there's a lot of stuff that becomes smoother, and it should be smoother. And there's a lot of stuff that becomes smoother, and it feels like they kind of filed off this part of the game that was actually much more interesting and much more challenging and much more exploratory, and letting the player kind of figure things out themselves, and not mocking the player with like I always have a problem
patronizing the player.
Yeah, I always have a problem with like suggestions from the game to move down to an easier difficulty or something. Even if it's optional, it feels like a taunt from the game, and I don't think that's the intention. The intention is to help players through, but I think there are other ways that you can help players stick with the game and get through it without kind of going to that level, if you kind of think about it. So I think a lot of independent developers are trying to keep up with modern game design without losing the parts of games that they enjoy from older games and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks so much for talking with us, Derek Yu, and good luck at the awards tonight. And looking forward to when Spelunky is released on XBLA.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. This is the Idle Thumbs GDC 2012 Conf Blast, the fourth one. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Steve Gaynor. And I'm Nick Brecken.
And we're joined by Bennett Foddy, the developer of QWOP and GIRP and PoleRiders and all sorts of other games that you can find on foddy.net.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. How's your GDC going?
It's great. It's my first GDC.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's been incredible. It's all these people I know from the internet, and now I've got to meet them in real life.
Yeah. What's the... Sorry.
Well, I mean, you're the only game here in the IGF, at the IGF Pavilion, but you also gave a talk at the Indie Game Summit.
Yeah,
as well, right?
Yeah, I've been like in everything. I'm doing experimental gameplay workshop with Mega GIRP, which is GIRP being played on dance mats. And I gave a talk that was like the first talk of GDC, and we had a party last night with some of my games.
Yeah.
And I'm a IGF loser, so you know. No, seriously though, I mean, it's just been great to be able to come out here and sort of have a booth on the floor and everything.
Yeah. I mean, like you've been really involved. I think a lot of people come to GDC as spectators, but it's cool you've been in so many different aspects of it.
Well, I mean, given how tired I am now, I think I can understand why people in subsequent years would come back and just like hang out.
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense. But I'm not. I don't get to come here every year. This is a sideline for me, and I don't always manage to get away. I can't always justify the expense, so I just really want to do it full on.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
Something I learned in your talk on Monday was that you're a researcher at Oxford.
That's right.
Yeah. And in philosophy, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about how weird, fucking crazy games
interact with your history as a researcher?
Well, for many years it didn't. I sort of work on medical ethics, medical philosophy, biomedical technologies. There wasn't really any overlap. Plus, also, like, philosophy is full of a lot of... Well, okay.
Your games, the ones that have really, I think, picked up attention, like QWOP and GIRP, have been about like controlling muscle groups.
Left thigh, right thigh.
Right. So I mean, I'm starting to see it that way. But in philosophy is full of these kind of old-fashioned people, not just old people, but people who could have been born like many generations ago, and they don't really play games. And so I was in the closet for a long time. A couple of years ago, I started to get more press, and it just started to become unfeasible to do that. And plus, I started to think I was being silly about it. So I came out as a cunning video game person. And so now
to your peers,
not
just to the people on internet forums.
Right. So and now I'm trying to kind of roll the two things together a little bit. But it's more about doing philosophy of video game addiction. That's kind of the angle I'm taking. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, people don't really talk about video game addiction, so I can kind of make a niche there, and then I've got an excuse to come to events like this, and I can put it on my. I can't really charge it to my academic accounts, but at least I don't have to kind of claim leave. Like, it sort of is work. I'm doing public engagement, so it's all right.
Well, this is such a weird thing to bring up, but speaking of video game addiction, it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the things that I respect so much about your games, and that I think is one of the reasons I find your games so kind of philosophically appealing, is that they appear, at least to me, and I could be wrong about this, but they seem to almost deliberately eschew a lot of the techniques and attributes that many designers deliberately include with the either implicit or explicit goal of getting people addicted to their games, or at least something approximating addiction.
Right. I think that's true. I do sort of throw away a lot of standard video game tropes, but not all of them. I mean, I do want games to be. I want my games to be kind of maximally accessible.
Sure.
But the way that I understand that is only within
for what they are.
But no, like QWOP, for example.
Yeah.
It doesn't put like a string of menus and buttons and tutorials in between you and the game. It says, here you are, just play it. But I do think about it in certain kind of video gaming ways. One of the things that we do as video game designers is we make sure that whatever the player does, there's some kind of feedback. So, I'm big on those ideas. I think those things make a game better without necessarily kind of forcing it down a particular road.
Yeah.
But there are some sorts of things which you do, like if you have like levels and like boss monsters and guns, all of those things kind of force you to make a game that's similar to other games. So I don't want to do that. I don't have a lot of time to work on games. And to be honest, I've been playing games sort of non-stop for sort of almost 30 years now, and I'm bored of games with guns. I'm bored of platformers. I still enjoy like a really good one, don't get me wrong, but I want to play new things, and I feel like there's all these people making kind of crazy new games at the moment. So that's what I want to be part of.
I mean, you play a shooter, one shooter for 8 hours or whatever, and then often, long before you finish, at least for me, long before I finish it, I've gotten gun fatigue. But I feel like I'm in just sort of the macro version of that now, where I almost have just overriding gun fatigue, where I just, okay, one more game where you just endlessly shoot a gun forever. All right. Doesn't mean there are not great examples of games being made that use those mechanics, but as a concept, it's something that really gets weird.
No, that's right, and I think that I get, it's really unfair of me in a way if I see a game and go, it's got a gun, I don't want to play it. But that's just the emotion that I have.
I think that's perfectly fair.
And the same thing with, I love that kind of high fantasy thing as well, like the high fantasy role-playing games. But then you have like Skyrim, Skyward Sword, like you've got all these games coming out with the exact same sort of setting and ideas and experience. I've kind of lost interest in that as well. But you do get gems coming out of AAA studios. I thought Mirror's Edge, there's a game.
I love that game.
Yeah, that doesn't have guns. It's got no combat.
That was the worst part of that game.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said it does have guns, and that was the big weakness of that game.
We must have played a different game.
There were parts where you actually had to use guns.
He's joking.
Because my mental version of that game doesn't have guns.
No, that's how I played it.
Yeah.
But despite being very aware of gaming addiction, you did manage to ruin 2 lives.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next. I mean, that's Nick and I sort of. this is the thing I like so much. Nick and I, when we talked about this way back in the day on the podcast, but we were in a hotel room together during a BlizzCon several years ago, and we entirely intrinsically, just not with any sort of artificially, extrinsically imposed rewards, we just created almost a QWOP addiction for ourselves with this like one-upmanship of, like, we were sitting there back to back in this hotel room, each on a laptop, going like, oh man, I just got 17 meters. Yeah. The guy's, oh god damn it.
I love hearing that.
That was an amazing experience.
My best experiences in games have been like playing with a good friend or with my brother, and like just like totally getting lost in a game together. And I think that's like one of the best things that gaming in general has to offer. So I'm really glad to hear that. But look, I mean, that's why I think that addiction in video games is an interesting philosophical problem, because we like it, right? We use it as a selling point. There used to be awards, not anymore because it's kind of gone out of vogue. But there used to be awards for like most addictive game, and so it's you would never do that about like an antidepressant. You never say, buy our antidepressant, it's the most addictive one on the market.
You're going to love buying more of this.
Right.
You're going to love funneling money into this product.
Exactly. And that's what I think is a bit creepy about free-to-play, because it actually starts to take on those overtones. But if you've bought a game, you've already paid as much as you can pay. So it's sort of like, if you get addicted, it sort of indicates that you're having a good time and you don't want to stop. But there is
necessarily indicate you're having a good time.
No, right. So there is that dark side of it. I think it is kind of fascinating.
It all depends on what the mechanics that cause that are. Because I mean, there's stuff that's way more slot machine-y, like loot drops and like all this, reward schedule kind of stuff. But someone at some point asked me like what I thought about game addiction, that kind of exploitative gameplay, and I was like, well, you can be addicted to a game in the way that you are when you stay up until 3 a.m. playing Super Smash Brothers with your friends, like all weekend, or like Mario Kart or Halo on Xbox One or something like that. And that is just, you've all bought the game, and it's so mechanically good that you just don't want to stop playing it. And I feel like that's kind of what you guys' plot example was, versus like, oh, I gotta wait for my next sugar drip.
You can be addicted to anything, but I mean, there's a line that you have to draw, whether something's being malicious about.
I gave a talk at NYU where I was using like Diablo and the loot drop system. It's like I was comparing it to slot machines, and I was saying that's exploitative. Whereas I don't think like Tetris is exploitative. But they actually said, like, fuck that, Diablo's my favorite game of all time. So some people like the slot machine thing, right? Even if they were saying, even if this is exploiting my psychology and making me addicted through through the lizard brain.
But that's the big difference. Well, I don't know, Steve, sorry.
No, go ahead. You played a ton of Diablo, so you have
I did, well, I'm Diablo 1, and I think that's something that's really makes the issue in video games a much more complicated and nuanced gray area than a slot machine, for example, because a slot machine is literally nothing but that. Whereas Diablo, especially Diablo 1 in particular, is an incredibly atmospheric, coherent world with amazing art design and sound design and music. I mean, there's a lot of artistry in that game that doesn't. When you walk into a hall of slot machines at a casino, it's just nothing but depressing, and that's it. And so but that doesn't necessarily mean but there's a point, though. Video games.
Maybe it does. Maybe the justification for the slot machine is in the value it provides. And the thing about like a real slot machine is it's not providing any value to the person whatsoever. You're seeing the same set of wheels going around over and over again. And it's difficult to justify that.
There's a point when you're playing a game, though, that you see that slot machine sort of become exposed. I mean, I find that I'll be playing a game and I'll be addicted to it, but I'm still getting value, and then it's just, there's like a curve where there's a point where I just realize, now it's just numbers and there's nothing here.
And the same game can be both of those, as you say. I mean, like, I've played more Diablo 2 than any human should in his life, and past a certain point, I wasn't getting anything emotionally or artistically out of the experience. I mean, I definitely am self-aware enough to realize that past a certain number of hours in that game, past a certain number of just repeated playthroughs, once I was just playing the same class through again and again and again, there really was very little that I was emotionally getting out of that experience. I mean, I'm not going to reflect any more really on anything. I was purely just in it. And it doesn't mean I think it's a bad game, because I did get a lot of genuine value out of it, but again, it's not there's a big gray area there where.
So I've been talking to the guys in the gambling lab at Oxford about this stuff. They've been really studying this. Yeah, they're studying like how people get addicted to gambling. And there's all these different things that kind of characterize the transition into problem gambling. Right? You start having certain kinds of thoughts. You get more superstitious. You start chasing a loss. Like, so you think, well, that wasn't a real go. If I just, if I play again after, and then I'll bet really big because I just had a big loss, and that's that kind of thing. And then they start to believe in like being on a roll. And they also had these things like people who thought that they were in control of the outcome were more likely to have problems, and that you can spot them because they start doing things like when they're shaking dice before they throw them, they shake it for a really long time.
Right.
That kind of thing. So clearly, like rationality breaks down when you get really addicted. I think this is true in video games too. So at some point when you've been playing Diablo for like weeks and weeks, you've lost the ability to judge whether you're getting value out of it as well, and you're also making kind of bad decisions. You might even be thinking, I'm not having a good time, let's play again. That's not a rational thing to do. So I think that can happen. There is that sort of dark side to video games.
I think there's something also about just like the variance in brain chemistry between individuals. Because I've read and written stuff about this, and there was this episode of This American Life that turned me onto this one fact, which they talked to somebody who had been, I think, on an antidepressant drug, and when they started taking it, they just became addicted to gambling. They had never gambled before, they had, and it hadn't had any effect on them, and they took this drug, and now they just like threw their life away going to this casino every fucking day, and they went to the doctor and switched them on a different drug, and their gambling addiction was gone. And I'm like,
that's fascinating.
That means,
that's terrifying.
Yeah, and I put a link to that in this thing that I wrote recently, and it's like, if you can rebalance the brain chemicals of an individual to determine whether they're going to be compelled by gambling or not, then that means that, like, if you play Diablo 2 for 200 hours, and I only play it for 20 hours, and like, that I guess all I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it because you like it at all. You just don't even necessarily have any control over whether you're doing it or whether you like it or not, just based on your fucking genes.
It's not just genes. Like, there's all these different things that make a person more vulnerable to getting addicted or not. But it's really tricky because whatever product you make, whether it's a video game or a gambling machine or cigarettes or snack foods, right?
Yeah.
Some proportion of people are going to have a really serious problem with it. Now, for some things, it'll be like a different proportion than others. But there have been cases of carrot addicts, people who eat carrots in an addictive way.
Turn orange.
Yeah, they turn orange. Water addicts, right? You can get addicted to anything.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of a question, if you know that some proportion of people are sort of vulnerable to this and are going to get addicted no matter what are your responsibilities as a video game designer? Do you need to make your game less addictive? Do you need to make it less abusive? I mean,
John Blow talks about that kind of stuff.
Well, he believes really strongly in that, but it's sort of easy for him because he's sort of involved in making a particular kind of game. Now, if you're making like an action game, it's like a lot of what people want out of it is this particular addictive quality.
Yeah.
Now, does he think that we should throw away all action games? I don't think so, right? So, but can you make an action game that's rewarding but not addictive? I don't think so. I think those things go hand in hand, and it's actually like the pleasure and the reward you get out of a video game that makes it addictive. That's what makes anything addictive.
Because there is a spectrum, right? Because like I've thought about, there's this kind of phenomenon, and it applies to slot machines, but also applies to like watching basketball or playing first-person shooter. Whatever, like in a ton of games, there's this concept that I don't. There's probably an actual real word for it, but I refer to it as like hang time, where it's like between the time that the player releases the basketball and it either goes through the hoop or not. There's just this big question mark, right? And like between pulling the arm and seeing what the result is on a slot machine, and like between pulling the trigger in an FPS and seeing whether you hit the guy or not. You're just testing the world and seeing like what's the result constantly. And I think that central experience is a big part of addiction. I want to find out that thing again and again, and how resistant you are to like needing to do that.
It's really cool that you said that, because I was talking to these researchers at Oxford who have like people gambling, like problem gamblers in brain scanning devices, and you can see when their brain is like reacting to a kind of pleasurable stimulus. And to begin with, when someone starts gambling, it's like they get a pleasure from a win, right? Just like you'd expect. But after they start to develop a habit, they get a pleasurable, rewarding stimulus not when they win. It shifts over to when the wheels are spinning. So it's exactly what you say. It's that hang time moment. That's the kind of compulsive thing. So your intuition is right on the money. That's been upheld in brain scanning experiments now.
Oh, this has been a really fascinating talk.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for taking your time.
Also, I really want to put a quick end note on this. Last night there was this wacky party event GDC thing, and this may not be new, but it was the first time I had encountered one of Bennett's games, PoleRiders. I don't know when did it come out? When did it release?
A few months ago now.
So I'm behind the curve on that. But it's an incredible, hilarious game. It's almost, if you've played Nidhogg or if you've heard people talk about Nidhogg, it almost sort of evokes that, but through the lens of the guy who made QWOP. You can play it on Foddy.net, right?
Right.
So you should. I don't even need to go into it because you can play it for free anyway. So it's a competitive game and it's incredible. So please go play that.
Yeah, it's like dumb, juvenile Nidhogg. That's the idea.
But like Nidhogg, there's, despite the very simple mechanics, there's an incredible amount of nuance and clearly the ability to become an expert at it.
Plus, unlike Nidhogg, it's out.
Yeah, Nidhogg has been perpetually coming soon for what, like a year, 2 years now?
That's right.
Ridiculous. This is better. So, thanks again.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's been fantastic talking to you guys.
Right.
I mean, this thing isn't a conf grenade.
It isn't quite a conf grenade.
No. I mean, is it a blast? Could it be,
I think it would be considered a conf blast. Yeah.
A conf blast is a stupid name,
conf
but
grenade blast. It's the blast created by exploding.
What is a blast and what is a grenade?
There you go. There are either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 interviews.
Or none,
or
which would be
none.
funnier.
Or we're back now. Hi there.
Hey, welcome back.
You heard our news bumper.
That's true. We'll be back soon with another Progress Cast.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye. Go to the Kickstarter.
Oh, AddleThumbsUp.net/Kickstarter. Chris
Yeah, we have
Randall.com.
9 days left. Thank you guys so much.
We have fewer than 9 days left.
9 days. It's 5 days. No days. No, we have some days. Go look.
Oh, I want to be the last person to talk.